We will be taking the lights down in a minute so that you can see the screen, but we do have some children wrapping up gymnastics and we don't want them to be injured as they exit, so we're going to wait just a minute on that. We do have some updated new information in the slides tonight, so if you saw the presentation last month, this is a little different, so hopefully you'll find some new things you'll be able to see. We will take questions just like we did at the last public meeting. We have comment cards. We will pass those out as soon as the presentation is complete. At the last meeting, we answered every question that was given that was on topic. We do have a quorum of counselors present, so we cannot move off topic. So if your question is about a pothole or about a water bill or something that is not on tonight's stated purpose, we'll be happy to talk to you privately about those issues, but we can't address them from the front. So when it is time, we will pass out those cards. If you write down your question or your comment, we will address every one of them tonight while we're all here. So with that, we're going to go ahead and introduce Mayor John Easton, who has a few words to start us off.
Really want to thank everyone for coming out and getting involved in what we're trying to do here in Bixby. And one of the reasons we want you here, we want your input and answer all your questions. So I want to recognize that we do have a couple other city councilors here. Harold King is, where's Harold? I saw him a minute ago. There's Harold over there. And Brian Guthrie is here, another city councilor there in the back. You know, this election that's coming up for Bixby, I've lived in Bixby all my life, and I've watched a lot of elections come and go. I think this is probably the most dynamic, well-rounded set of proposals that's ever been offered to the folks down here. It just covers so many things. It's important to us. I'm going to have to read my thing because there's so many. Number one, it develops economic opportunities. It provides a framework to entice developers to come to Bixby and put in their stores and their restaurants so that we don't have to drive all the way to Tulsa to do that. It's a development of the river, and that's kind of twofold. That gives us an area where we can take the family down and play, do some activities in the river, make it a lot more attractive to cross that bridge. And then the sand that we propose to dredge out of the river will be used to fill properties that will raise other city-owned properties to where we can develop them. One of the things that is going on, we have a North Sewer Lagoon that we've been ordered by DEQ to shut down because it's just out of date, and we got to go in there and fill all of that up. And so the material that comes out of the river is going to be utilized. So that's kind of a twofold deal. And then obviously everything around the river will attract folks that might want to put in maybe a river walk or something, you know. If we develop it, the theory is that folks will come. That's what happened in downtown Tulsa. It's what happened the Rose District, Blue Dome District. So we know this formula works, and so that's kind of what we're looking at. We're looking to revitalize downtown. Jared is going to show you some slides of kind of what we've proposed. Keep in mind these slides are renditions of what we have proposed, but we don't have the money yet to engineer this stuff. So these are not set in stone, and the plan is if these proposals do pass, we're going to have town hall meetings more like this and get ideas. Somebody might have an idea to do something downtown that we haven't thought of. So this will help kind of get our community pulling together for a common cause. And so when you see these slides that Jared's proposed, they are just renditions, and anybody got any ideas, well, pop up. Let's talk about them. Traffic control, that's always an important thing to put in an election. This does provide for traffic control going into Washington Irving Park. Now, if you're on the east lane going north, you have to cross a lane of traffic to get into Washington Irving. Or if you're in Washington Irving and you want to go back north, you have to cross traffic. So one of the things in this is a loop that will go underneath the bridges, and we won't have to cross traffic anymore. Quality of life, I've mentioned that. Sure, if we have a restaurant here in town, more restaurants in town, we don't have to go north to do it. We have shops here in town. You know, we can't buy shoes in Bixby. We can't buy clothes. We can't buy TVs in Bixby. And well, wouldn't it be nice if we get our infrastructure and our destiny? Is that the right word? Not destiny. What's a better word? Destination point. Okay. We want to create a destination. Thank you, Mandy. Proposition, and Jared's going to go through I'm going to go through the propositions as well. We have a proposition to provide for our ability to strengthen public safety. Our fire department, our police department, and our street department numbers of personnel have not grown since the downturn of the economy. Because of this outstanding school system we have here, we're growing. And we're going to have to step up and start providing more public safety. And a city is only able to fund that stuff from sales tax. And Oklahoma is the only state in the union that does that. Right now, like I said, we have a lot of sales tax leaking into Tulsa. Internet sales are starting to creep in. You know, we're not collecting sales tax on internet sales. So what these propositions affect, they're affecting sales tax. And this also, then we have the third and fourth proposition. It took two propositions to do this. Repurposes an existing tax that supports our park system. In 2006, when Bentley Park was voted on by the people of Bixby, the leaders then had the foresight to tag along a half-cent tax that would fund parks in Bixby. Half of that half-cent, or a quarter, so it was a quarter cent, went straight to the park fund, and the other quarter cent went to our debt load. We don't need the debt load any part of that tax anymore. So we're going to take not all of that, but most of that, and Jared will have the figure, and put it straight into the parks. And then the other will go into a capital improvement truck, fire trucks, street repair, that sort of thing. Now that is important for a couple reasons. It isolates that money, number one, but now the parks require more money than that tax provides for. So there's about, on any given year, $200,000 to $300,000 that comes out of the Bixby general fund that we use to supplement our parks. We won't have to do that anymore. This will send all of that, the tax money to the parks, and then we've got that $200,000 to $300,000 available that we can do other things with. We can, other capital improvements, anything else. So that kind of gives a shot in the arm back to our budget. Now we're going to do this with no additional taxes. No additional taxes. If you read the ballot, it's a little confusing. And I'm going to tell you how that works. Okay, Vision 2025 was a county tax, and that's 0.6 of a penny. That tax expires in December of 2016. In Tulsa County, all of the cities in Tulsa County kind of grouped together and formed an alliance called Cities United. We meet twice a month. And it's all the cities meeting, working for a regional picture. And so our intent with that is we thought we would go for the old Vision 2025 money. So every city in Tulsa County is going for it. Sapulpa had their election in October, passed by 81% of the vote. Broken Arrow is having theirs at the same time we are. Owasso and Tulsa and Jinx put theirs off until, I think, April. We don't know for sure. That's kind of in flux. So that replaces Vision. Now the ballot is a little complicated. Because we're going from a county tax to a city tax, it's actually considered a new tax. But it's the same money. It's the same money. If you were to spend $1,000 in Bixby, you're going to spend $5.50 on this for every $1,000 you spend. If you spend $10,000 a year in Bixby, it's going to cost you $55.50 to support these proposals. Proposition 1 is based on river and downtown development. Bixby has a river that runs through it that we've not done anything to improve it ever. It's our biggest natural resource. Let's utilize it. You know, Tulsa's making theirs work. Cities all across the country are realizing folks are attracted to water. And then I've gone through our public safety, what we're going to do there, and I've gone through 3 and 4, and that's to repurpose the park tax. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jared. Our election is November 10th, and if anybody doesn't understand any of this, we're happy to stay and help you, or if anybody has a homeowners association, Jared and I have kind of a tour going on where we're going to where anybody wants to talk about it, we'll be there and talk to you about it. So, Jared?
And Manny, do we want to give the cards out now or later or after the talk? Okay. So we do have the cards, just so that you know, and once we finish this, we'll hand those out and go to the question and answer time. One of the things I do want to point out and let you all know that your council sat down to come up with this plan, and that's where it generated. Your elected representatives spent an entire weekend going through all the different possibilities and what could we do as a comprehensive plan for the entire city. What is that comprehensive strategy that takes economic development, takes quality of life, takes all those things that we hear from people all the time that we need to get done, and how do you put that into one package? And that's really what this is. And we'll start with the existing Vision 2025 tax. Out of that, the City of Bixby has 3 major projects. The middle project is the one that everyone has probably seen right now. That's the downtown, the streetscaping, the lights, the sidewalk, the pattern concrete. That was all paid for out of the Vision money. The other project is Hakey Creek. That particular project is going to take about 900 acres out of the floodplain and ready for development. And this 900 acres lies on either side of Mingo Road, more or less between 121st and 131st. So that's mostly where that's at. We've started the first phase of that, constructing the bridges. We've got a notice in the paper for the Clomer that's going to change the floodplain maps. FEMA permitted us to go ahead and publish that. So that means they're real close to turning us loose on doing the excavation and construction of Hakey Creek. The last portion is Charlie Young Event Park, which is downtown, and out of that Vision surplus, there were the Vision surplus monies were monies that came in over and above the original obligations of the package. So we've got about $2 million to go, and council elected to go downtown and rework Charlie Young Park as Charlie Young Event Park for the economic reasons that the mayor was talking about, and we'll look at that briefly as to why and what the strategy is with that and that investment that's already going to happen. The first slide is we really want to talk about what is the downtown river district. And as you can see from the map, in the green in the upper left is Washington Irving Park. The green in the lower right is Bentley Park. And then down near the bottom of the yellow line is downtown. And the strategy includes those components. River access. We know that we've got a lot of interest in river development. That's how we got to this point to begin with. The last 2 years, we understood that was going to be a low water dam. And we were participating regionally with Tulsa and Jenks and Sand Springs to take the Vision tax. And the idea of this 0.6 cents was for economic development, community development. So we went through a 2-year process, and in July found out that we were not going to be part of that anymore as a regional effort. So that really precipitated council sitting down saying, okay, we know we have needs in public safety. What other needs do we have? We have some interest in river development. What can we do with economic development with that other piece? So they shifted gears from a low water dam to focus on river development, and what else could we do? So we'll go through and look at some of the slides. The basic philosophy was build on assets that we have, successes that we have, and what reflects the community. And really those things that we do well are events. Bentley Park brings people here. Washington Irving, the Barbecue and Blues to the Rotary, we can get thousands of people here. They will come with quality facilities and quality events. And that's a proven formula. We know that works. The mayor talked about it. What is that formula? Let's use the assets we have and the kind of events that bring people here. Because the concept is if you have economic development here, rather than us export dollars to Tulsa to pay for their roads and streets, we bring other dollars in. The city of Bixby, or your average citizen in Bixby, spends about half of their tax dollar, over half their tax dollars in Tulsa somewhere. And we know that based on some of the data. We'll look at it a little bit later. But this is a strategy to bring those dollars and keep them here, have other people help pay for your streets, your roads, rather than us pay for someone else's. As far as access goes, the mayor, there's the loop road you can see right along the right of way that would prohibit left turns at Washington Irving Park. We really see three major components of the event. We've got Washington Irving Park as an asset, Bentley Park, and we'll connect those with the river, but be sure that we have good traffic control as we get there. Some of the other input that we've had is gateways and wayfinding. How do you find downtown Bixby? How do you know when you're there? There's a lot of folks, even in the northern parts of the town, who haven't been south unless they've been to the school. Some of the people that we've had come work on some of these projects, we're trying to identify now just exactly where does downtown begin and end. And like a lot of successful districts, having monument signs, wayfinding signs is a key to help people know when you're getting there and where to go. This is the component, Washington Charlie Young Event Park, that will be constructed next year with Vision surplus money. So why are we doing the downtown River District? Again, it's building on success that we have, assets that we already have. If we're going to spend $2 million in Charlie Young Park, and what can we do there? Can we have farmers market? Yes. Movies? Yes. Could you set up an ice skating rink in the wintertime, just like they do in downtown Tulsa? Why not? Concerts in the park? There's any number of possibilities that you could have in downtown. And again, events are proven to bring people there and bring that growth. You can see that in Tulsa. You have baseball field, BOK, lots of folks there, and then that pattern is repeated over and over. So we're trying to reinvest in those things that we already know that we do well and those strategies that are good. So doing the downtown River District capitalizes on the investments that we've already made, and there has been a lot of local support, even as far back as low water dams. Polls showed 70% of people were for river development, and so that's a pretty strong indication that people have interest in that. It's not just Bixby. That's Jinx, that's Tulsa, that's Sand Springs. There are a lot of communities that had a lot of interest in river development. Again, here's another. This is looking north and west from the south side of Charlie Young, what that would look like. Pictures are always better to talk from. People enjoy those more. So everybody recognizes Walgreens. Again, that's the picture showing you what some of those wayfinding signs would look like. So the questions that we have, what is it? And why are we doing the downtown? Part of this comprehensive strategy is why would we do it now? Why are we voting in November? Why not next spring? Well, next spring, that we typically do not overlap the school. They have a big issue coming up. And just by agreement, we try not to step on their toes and they try not to step on our toes. Let everybody have that election for what it is and everybody understands those issues. That's a big issue for them. We don't want to mix in with that. And so if we went even later than that, we get into the April elections. And we're not sure what everyone else is going to do. As a matter of fact, the Cities United group that the mayor spoke about back in January made an announcement. The mayor of Broken Arrow was the leader of that group and said, we're going to vote in November. Absolutely, we're going to vote in November. We're all going to be on the same page and do the same thing. And it was an effort so that you didn't have one community trying to get a leg up on someone else. As it happened, 3 of those communities that were there have kept to that program. And Bixby's one of those. Broken Arrow is the other one, going to vote at the same time that we do. If we vote now, in November, we'll have time for those public input, for those meetings to get what other ideas are out there. What else can we do on the river? What else can we do downtown? This is not an exhaustive plan. These are concept plans. These are ideas. These are to spark and generate other, and some of these ideas will probably hold. Some will change. We expect that. But if we have a year's worth of time, we can get Charlie Young built, get that public input, and in 2017, when those construction monies are available, hit the ground running with the rest of it and tie right into it. And again, I'm not sure what other opportunities we're going to have for river development, what other funding mechanisms. The Vision 2025 ran its course, served its purpose, and quite frankly, is that a bond issue? Lots of other needs that would occur through that, and I can't think of another one that's been there, another opportunity to fund river development like the opportunity that's here now. So that's another strong argument for why are we doing this now, and why is it on the river. On the north side, north would be to the right of the screen. This is a schematic showing the very south end of Washington Irving Park where the sand plant is now. So here's a concept, and we are in negotiations on this particular property right now, but what might that look like if we're able to acquire that property, build the river access? Here's some concepts. We could take that property and increase, just like those other slides show, the shoreline. If we create some additional island areas out in the river, again, we know that the river right now, in the main thread of the river, is about 8 to 9 feet deep. Okay, we've already got plenty of depth in there for watercraft, but it's just in that main flow of the river area. The rest of it are the sandbars. But if we can widen those areas where the main flow of the channel is and train the water, and we spoke to a lot of the engineers working for the low water dam, folks that had come in and had expertise from other areas of the country, and talking about training the river, talking about moving the water where you want it to go, keeping those deep areas we can have recreation, and managing the sand. We've got more sand than we could ever hope to use to accomplish this purpose, and looking at the geotech. Another concept, looking east toward the bridge. And this particular area, the other concept we have is a south access area at Bentley Park. And this is that little piece of property just north is to the bottom of the page, just north and east of the multipurpose building. Again, here's some concepts: river access, overlook, beach, swimming areas, or fishing areas off the pier. Those are all things that are contemplated there. So these are all things that we want to take through that public process and get responses to what activities are important to folks. You can see the old bridge piers right there in the middle of the screen. A lot of questions about getting in the water. What is that water like in the Arkansas River? The Water Resources Board is working with Tulsa, the city of Tulsa, to reclassify the Arkansas River as a primary body contact stream through Tulsa County. And you can see from the map on the upper left, there's only one segment of the Arkansas River that's not classified as primary body contact, and that's the part through Tulsa County. And the question is, why is that rated as a secondary body contact? Is that Tulsa County, with the number of safety issues they were having with people on the river, and a lot of that had to do with the low water dams that were in Sand Springs and Zinc, that they wanted to discourage people from getting in the water. So from a permit standpoint, anybody discharging into the Arkansas River has always had to have primary body contact standards. So it's always been treated from an environmental standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint, as if it was a primary body contact stream, but they declassified it to discourage people from getting in the water from the safety standpoint. So they're going to undertake, the Water Resources Board, and those in the lower right shows those areas are going to be reclassified as a primary body contact stream. I mean, the Great River Raft Race was one of those that they're using to show that yes, this is indeed a stream that can be utilized. That was proposition number one. Proposition number one is 3/10 of that 6/10 Vision 2025. Proposition 2 is the public safety component. And again, why would we need that public safety component? And what I put up here is a graph, and hopefully that you can read. The top number is the number of full-time employees per 1,000. And the little bar on the far right is Bixby, the number of employees that the city has per 1,000. And if you can read, I can't tell if you guys can read that or if it's blurry. Bixby's the far right. The one right next to us is Sperry, Mounds, Glenpool, Catoosa, and Jinx, and then Broken Arrow. So on a per capita basis, Sperry and Mounds have more employees than Bixby. And so does Glenpool, and so does Jinx. The lower slide, what does that look like in terms of the police department, for instance? You can see Tulsa, 1 officer per every 508 citizens. Broken Arrow, 1 per every 807. Broken Arrow's following the same process that we are and looking for public safety because they're looking at that 807 number, and they're going to try to reduce that. But you can see what Bixby is, where we are right now. 1 officer for every 960 citizens. Socioeconomically, Broken Arrow is very similar. And if we're able to pass this Proposition 2, we won't quite get to the level that they are, but we'll make a significant improvement. On the far right, what you can see is the percent of sales tax funds expended for public safety. Again, why do we need some more revenue? Most of those numbers are greater than 100%. And the city operates, its operating budget is based on sales tax. And the mayor talked about property taxes go to the school and the county. Cities operate off 2 cents. There are 2 cents that are dedicated to general operations for the city. There are some additional fractions of pennies on there, but those are all for dedicated purposes, just like vision is a dedicated purpose. It can't be used for police officers or firemen. There's a sales tax to support sanitary sewer improvements in the city, which we're going to utilize when we build that new wastewater treatment plant to help offset the costs to ratepayers. So we're distributing this money to try to keep all those costs down. Those are dedicated uses. Those can't be used for general operations, and most of them are capital. Part of it is generated for, we talked about the parks. So those are all dedicated uses. So what that's telling you is out of that 2 pennies, if we're funding greater than 100%, other city revenues, fees, permits, all those things are help covering those costs. And Broken Arrows recognize it, Sand Springs, some of the other communities in the same boat that we are. When you're exporting tax dollars, how do you fund those services that you know that your citizens need? This is just a quick slide to show you Bixby relative to some of the other metro area communities. And the 2 things to key on are the median household income and how much those households generate in sales tax, per penny of sales tax. And you can see Broken Arrow, Bixby, and Jinx are down at the bottom, about $360, $366. And you can go across and look at Sand Springs and Tulsa, who generate almost $100 more per penny with not quite half, but nearly half of the average household income. So when you look at that graph and you see what Tulsa's taking in versus their income, and you look at Bixby or Broken Arrow, you can see that those sales tax dollars are going somewhere else. And when they're going somewhere else, we're not able to fully fund. Like now, Owasso, it's not going anywhere. You can see Owasso's yield, even though a smaller household income, is almost double Bixby. So those services that they need to provide, it's much easier for them because they're able to capture and keep those tax dollars home. Okay, what does that quarter penny in public safety generate? That's $700,000. So for you guys to get a picture of a yearly revenue, that's what this is giving you. That $700,000 will provide 3 firefighters, 4 police officers, 2 dispatchers, and 2 additional street and drainage laborers. For the most part, we're trying to flesh out full crews is what that does. For the firemen, that lets them put a full crew on every shift. For the police department, lets some folks take some vacations. That's what that does. For the street and drainage, allows you to have 2 full maintenance crews. So those are all the kinds of things that quarter penny will accomplish. So now we're going to shift gears from that vision, 0.6, over to the 0.5 total of existing taxes that we already have. That's on the right-hand side of the screen. Proposition 3 is taking that tax that's meant for debt service and reallocating it, part of it to parks and part of it to capital improvement. Okay, so when we shift to parks, like the mayor talked about, we have a $300,000 deficit right now today in our parks department to maintain the parks at the level that everybody's come to expect, and that's why people show up. So if we're going to add some additional park load, we already have a deficit now, we're going to add Charlie Young, add Washington Irving, because again, that economic development strategy is critical to bringing tax dollars. If we bring the tax dollars, it takes the burden off trying to supply police officers, firemen, all the services that people need. So that's why that economic development strategy is key for citizens to get the goals that they want out of what their city provides. So by doing that, it eliminates the subsidy to the park fund, provides some additional fund, and so that we can go and take on these new parks that we have and maintain them to the same level, because that's really the key. Those events are on top-notch facilities. Bentley Park, Washington Irving Park, people come because of those facilities. And again, that capital, the yellow piece for capital improvements, that could be used for street repairs, it could be used for fire trucks. A lot of times have to come out of other bond issues, other funding sources. We can use the funds that we have now and put those to places we can put those to work. Proposition 4. Proposition 4 is taking that sales tax for parks that expired in 2021 and making it permanent. And by making it permanent, it will ensure that we don't have a $700,000 deficit at the time that sales tax sunsets. So when we've made these investments, we put this funding in to maintain those facilities that's sustainable. Again, it's all part of that strategy. Top-notch facilities that are sustainable, bring folks in for economic development, bring outside tax dollars in, then everybody will benefit from those additional services that you guys deserve and come to expect. The summary, keeping the tax structure the way it is today. We've seen those benefits. Here's a quick rundown of what those are. And this is what the ballot looks like, just so everybody can have a picture. 4 propositions, but that single purpose. That's that economic development and public safety strategy. Because public safety is part of economic development. People want to feel safe. If they're going to come to downtown, they're going to get along the river, they need to feel safe to be there and enjoy it. And that's true of if you're in downtown Oklahoma City, you're downtown Tulsa, all those, that your level of comfort, people coming in, bringing their families, is all contingent on how safe that they feel. Now that's the last slide that we have. So if we have the cards and you would like a card, please put up your hand. We'll answer the questions and go through them. The questions that we have will be limited to this topic, more or less. So we'll run through those and answer those best we can.
We are going to go ahead and turn the overhead lights back on so you can see to right if you want to, but they do take just a minute once they're flipped, so be a little patient. We have some extra pins if you require one. If you don't have one with you, let me know, and we'll make sure you get one. And if you need more than one card, by all means, we do want your input. We want your feedback, so if you need more than one card, we'll be happy to bring you another one.
And if you haven't been to the meetings, we've done the cards 2 or 3 times, and our feeling is it's very successful in giving voice to everybody that shows up so that we can run through those questions and try to get as many answered as possible. I think last time we answered 30 to 40 questions, and that was almost one for everyone there. When we had the low water dam public meeting, I know we had 55 for certain. So. Okay, I'll jump in and start answering these, and you guys feel free to write any more as we go. The first question is with downtown. How does this plan affect the Old Town Bixby, and what about renovations, specifically from the residential homes that are in that area? Now, there's 2 parts to this question. The first part is that the city, we can invest in those public areas. We can do those event facilities. We can do street improvements. We can do all those things on public properties. And what we are anticipating, and you can see that change in downtown Tulsa. The theory, and you've seen it before, is you bring investment dollars in, and those private developers, those private investors, when they see the people that come, they will bring those investment dollars with them to provide those upgrades. So this doesn't directly take down any homes, doesn't take down any existing businesses. There is a possibility that there could be some grant monies available to some of the business owners to renovate their business frontage. But really what we're trying to do is create that core. Downtown Tulsa, what did you have? You had the BOK Arena, and you had the baseball field. And those were the 2 major public funding investments and some parking garages. All the rest of what you see down there is private investment. And that's really the key, that you bring people there, and we see it over and over again. The first question that people ask from an economic development standpoint, if it's a business coming in, they say, how many cars? How many cars? Don't ask where it is, don't ask what it looks like, how many cars, how many cars, how many people are there? And that's really what we're looking at. And if we can get those people here, that investment will follow. Okay, the next question, police and fire. How soon can we get funding into these areas? What's the time frame of Vision 2025? Okay, the Vision 2025 goes till the end of next year. so the end of 2016. So those tax dollars will be available at the beginning of 2017. Now, we do have in our budget for next year to add some additional public safety folks, but it's just a few compared to what we can do. We really get a boost, but that will be 2017. And that's when the county tax expires, and we'll be able to pick that up. Okay, and this next question is an economic development question. Are there any incentives for businesses to come to Bixby over other communities? Those are all taken on a case-by-case basis. And we've got our city attorney here and city council here, but a lot of the incentives that we are able to provide are mostly sales tax related. So if they can get some rebate, if they're bringing lots of sales tax in, you give them some rebate on that to help them build infrastructure. And that's primarily the incentive basis that we've used. Other communities will buy land and give it away. Other communities, so there's a bunch of different funding strategies. The funding strategy that we've adopted is those businesses that come in and get some rebate monies, it's up to them to make that money that pays them back. So there's no money out of the taxpayers. There's incentive for that business to grow and do well. And so those are the incentives that we've had. Not to say that we can't buy land and give it away, but we've not had that flexibility. We've had to use their success as the revenue for incentives for them to come to town. Okay. And if I read your question and I didn't turn it over and look on the back, wave your hand and I'll flip it over, because I hope I didn't miss any yet. This question: if a proposition does not pass, how soon can an alternate proposal be proposed and voted on? That's hard to answer, other than, there's been probably 4 to 5 months. Mayor, do you want to try to answer that one?
Well, there's going to be a school bond election next spring, and we've kind of had this standing agreement with the school system. We won't have an election the same time they do, and so we want to stay away from that. Next year is the presidential primary year. We're going to start getting into presidential campaigns, and I think that election's in March. We could maybe swing one in June, maybe July. I don't know if there's a date on June. The election board has certain dates that we can pick. This is not something we say, okay, let's have an election on June 15th or whatever. It would be August. If we didn't do April, it would be August. If we did August, the problem with that is we're not going to have time to get we would have time, but it's going to really slow everything back on getting community feedback. I mean, if this were to pass, we could start having town hall meetings and getting immediate feedback from the community on what they would like to see us build, what they would like to see us do. And if we had that feedback where we could start putting together a plan as to what we want to do, man, we could be ready to go in January of 17. I hope that answers it.
And Mary, you might hang on for the next one. This next question says, what does the council feel is priority 1, 2, 3, and 4 of these 4 proposals?
Well, I can't speak for all counselors. I think that's a trick question, because I think they all go together. I can't pick one out of the other. I think they're all equally important. And I just can't speak for any of the other guys. They're here. You might catch them on the way out and see what they're thinking. But
And I do think that the council saw that as the 4 legs of the table. If you've got to hold it up, you have to have the public safety. You have to have the economic development. They all go together. You have to have that sustainable funding source, so that when you put that money and you put those, just like Bentley Park, that's an $11 million investment that you've got to put the money in to keep it up to speed, so that money does not go to waste. The other part of that question: how are we going to convert citizens from spending their taxes in Tulsa? Quite frankly, you got to have the things here that people want to buy. You have to have those areas. The mayor talked about the retail, restaurants. Those things need to be here. And the way you get them here is get other people here. So those retailers, because again, why are they right there between 111th and the Creek Turnpike? There's about 35 to 40,000 cars a day that go through that area. And quite simply, that's why they're all squeezing in there, because they know that's the number of cars. That's why they're there. You get down to 121st, there's not that traffic. I mean, it is a lot of traffic. I mean, people are driving and go, yeah, there's a lot of cars there. Yes, there is. But from the economic development standpoint, from those retailers, they're looking at 30,000 and up. And when you start to get down at 121st Street, you start to drop off a little bit below 30,000. That's why they're north of 111th. And it's, unfortunately, that's just the reality. And so that's how you get those. You bring those people in, those retailers will follow with those monies. Okay. The next question is, what do we charge as a usage fee at Bentley and Keys, and can it be raised? And the fees that we charge are not anywhere near, obviously, what it costs to maintain those parks. Why? Because it's a quality of life facility for the kids in the baseball and the soccer, and I suppose you could try to go and recoup $700,000 from the kids that play soccer and baseball, and when you divide that out, I was trying to remember how many, about 700 people or kids are involved in soccer. I think maybe that was the number, and I don't remember how many are in baseball and softball. But you can quickly see the economics of that just don't work. I mean, this was a community decision to build those sports facilities, to invest in the kids, and for the most part, it is based on what those user groups can pay, reasonably charge fees for the kids that are playing there. Yes, there are tournaments that are out there. Those do bring people into town, and the city does benefit from the sales tax standpoint. We don't benefit enough. We don't have those other places. They go to Quick Trip and Subway and Taco Bueno, but we need to come to stay and sit down someplace, eat dinner, buy a few things. So for the most part, those user groups, those are negotiated with the council each year to pay what they can in their program.
You know, that facility wasn't built to be a revenue raising source for the city. You know, that's one of the reasons that the voters and the leadership back in 2006 added that half a penny, quarter penny to provide for maintaining that. They didn't want it to be a drain on the city and the voters knew that, and that's why they voted for both of those. But sure, that was not meant to be more of a quality of life than a revenue source.
This is the next question, Proposition 4. Why making the parks sales tax permanent? Why couldn't we put an end date and reevaluate when it expires? And there is an end date on it. It's 2021. So there is already an end date on that one, and that's why they're bringing it back to the voters now. In 2006, trying to understand what impact the park was going to have. I don't know that in 2006 anybody imagined the success, the number of teams that we've actually had. And we've had years of budget to know what it takes to operate a facility like that. It exceeds that quarter penny. And it's in some ways it's a good problem, and that we've had more success and more need. It's a difficult problem on the general fund, which funds police and fire and those other things, to subsidize out of that to help keep that park up to the same level that it needs to be to continue that success. So as it stands right now, it does have an expiration date. If it expires, instead of a $300,000 shortfall, that's a $700,000 shortfall just in that portion alone. Okay, when are improvements on 111th and 121st and Mingo going to happen from the 2011 bond? Speaks to the management of funds, which is an argument against a proposal for more tax. Okay, and I'll take this one head on. This one's very near and dear to my heart. Both of these projects, what we did as far as management of funds is we applied for state and federal dollars, 3-to-1. So for every dollar we put in, we get 3 federal dollars back. So that's really the management of funds. What's the downside? When you get 3-to-1, you have to follow the government rules and regulations from the federal standpoint. In order, we're going to build 111th, 121st, then 131st. Where are we right now? I turned in the right-of-way documents to Oklahoma Department of Transportation. They're reviewing them right now. Unfortunately, I was not able to get all the right-of-way bought until the end of July. About a year longer than I thought it was going to take. That's sometimes the way it works when you're acquiring right-of-way from from private citizens, but we were able to do that without any condemnation. So that's the bright spot. The part that's hard about that is that there are, I think I had to turn in notebooks that had 15 different parts of all the different things that you have to do to satisfy the federal requirements for right-of acquisition. So I'll take this one on. I have predicted many times. I thought it was going to happen before, and I was overly optimistic, but hopefully we've gotten through that. I've turned the right-of-way books in. I talked to the guy at the right-of-way. He said, yeah, everything looks good. We'll get back to you. There's some other paper that I hadn't heard of that's not in their list of things they want that I'm going to be going and getting in the next couple of weeks, get it back to them, and hopefully once the ODOT releases it, then it goes to construction. So that's kind of a long answer to say that we've turned the paperwork in, we finished the right-of-way in July, and that we're hopeful as soon as that is turned loose, we can go to construction. The 146th and Memorial, I think they've scheduled that particular project for next month, a pre-work. And that's, again, through that same process, and actually we were able to get 0 local dollars. So part of what we're trying to do is leverage dollars. What you pay for when you leverage dollars is time. So it had to take a little bit more time, be a little bit more frustrated, have to be a little bit more patient, but the 3-to-1 is what we can do. That means $3 that you don't have to have another bond issue in the future, $3 more that you don't have to have out to everyone in a future sales tax. So I hope that answered the questions. I know it's not satisfying. I thought we'd have been under construction a year ago, but that's really the answer as far as management of funds. We're trying to stretch those dollars as far as we can. Okay, Proposition 3 says repurposing debt service tax because we don't need it. Doesn't that tax pay for bonds like the one we're about to vote on? Okay, there are 2 different types of funding mechanisms. The 2011 bond goes on your property tax bill. Okay, so that's those bonds are property taxes. This would be a sales tax. So the issue that we had in 2011 or 2006 when we first passed it, this sales tax was used to help keep down the tax load on people's property taxes. And that was really what it was there. It was to limit how much got attributed to everybody's tax bill on their property. The city has grown significantly since 2006. That debt load is now spread out over a lot more people. So the individual load to any one landowner has dropped because everyone else's land is worth more. So everybody's paying a percentage lower than what they would have otherwise then. So this was really just to help property taxes. So it paid a portion of that debt so that your property tax didn't go up as high as the improvements were there. So that's why we're saying we don't need it, is because more development, more land available, that debt load is spread over more people. But this is sales tax. So this will be monies that come in from revenue. It is not levied against anybody's property. Okay, this question, any plans on adding another north-south bridge over the river? In the INCOG comprehensive master, let's see, I'm trying to think, the comprehensive plan, what they call it, the long-range master plan for transportation showed 2 bridges, one over in Broken Arrow and Leonard and one at Yale. With the experience that the folks are having on the one at Yale, we're hoping somebody at some point would build one, and it seems that perhaps the most likely candidate at this point is the Creek Nation. And we met directly with ODOT and OTA and had a lot of interest there, but we think that when the Creek Nation stepped up and had interest, then there was less interest from ODOT than OTA. But that particular bridge, I was talking to some representatives from the Creek Nation, and they said they thought that was going to have about a $40 to $50 million price tag. Okay, this Vision 2025 generates somewhere between 20 and 25 million, this 0.6. So we'd like to have as many bridges as we possibly could, but just for a bridge, not including the roads to get there, but which would double the cost, but just a bridge itself, based on what we know from what the Creek Nation shared with us, that's a $40 to $50 million price tag, and that would almost double your tax rates to get that done, and then there'd be additional land that had to be done with it. So right now, the only other place I think within our fence line is at Sheridan, and we don't really have a plan. Putting a bridge a mile from another bridge often doesn't generate the traffic distribution that you want it to unless people are headed that way. So Other than we do not have any other current plans for a bridge. Oh, and Memorial. Okay, that's another. As part of that conversation we had with ODOT, we said, what about adding lanes on Memorial? And their response was, when you guys get 75,000 cars a day instead of 25,000, we'll talk. It's not enough cars. Your bridge has enough capacity. And anybody that's driven on the bridge is frustrated, but what you have to understand is that that's not based, you can get that many cars across the bridge. The problem is dispersing those cars on each side, because you're going to go all the way up to 131st, probably up to 121st, before you have some other place to go. And when you're in that corridor, that's really the issue, is the capacity of that corridor. And we did a transportation plan, signalization to go from the Creek Turnpike all the way to 171st, say what should we do? We didn't want the number of signals that we have north. What are the things that we can do traffic control standpoint? And they told us pretty clearly, you guys need more lanes within the next 5 years, all the way down to the river. And we said, well, we understood that. But they felt if you had additional lanes, even between 131st and once you got to the bridge, you didn't need more lanes on the bridge if you had more lanes north and more ways for people to distribute and go where they wanted to go. And that was what we didn't tell them what we thought but that was part of their strategy. There's enough capacity in the bridge, the cars, but you have to be able to get that traffic dispersed on either side. So a long answer, but ODOT was fairly short and said, when you get triple the traffic, we'll think about it. Okay, and here's the other one. Concerns about the tax that does not have a sunset, that's a permanent tax. Can the tax be repealed? And if so, what is the procedure?
We didn't actually answer this one.
Okay. And I understand that. What's the procedure? These are local taxes. What that means is your 5 council members vote to have an election to repeal the tax. It's as simple as that. It's not a county tax. These are all local taxes. This is not going somewhere else. And that could be true for any of the taxes that we have right now. 5 council members vote to repeal that local tax, have an election, people vote it down, it goes away. So there's no more magic to it other than that. It's not state, it's not county, but it's at the local level. A lot of times the budgets, just like we've seen for the parks, it's tough to put them away unless you have money to take from somewhere else. But that's a voter-generated council issue at a local level, that can be taken off. Okay, this question, when do you think the final decision we made on the downtown river development concepts, how many meetings will there be to provide feedback on the details? We have not yet determined that. I would expect probably 4 to 5 meetings. We would really need to have a lot of that done by the summer of next year, because what you do is you go from those concepts, even the drawings that we have right now, if we were to try to go take construction drawings from the pictures that we have, would take a good 3 to 4 months to go from that concept drawing to detailed. Once you do that in a public bidding process, it takes 60 days. No matter what you do, from the time you say, let's go build it, it's going to take at least 60 days to get somebody out there on the ground, and that's fast. So that assumes they get their bonds. So that's the tightest window you get is 60 days in a public bid process. So you back up from there, and what you'd really want to do is have that lined out, have all those concepts, what we have, the budget, what we're going to do, very much like the process we followed with Bentley Park. And some of you may or may not be involved in that, but we had a master plan. We had the pretty picture. Here's what it's going to look like. We met with soccer, we met with baseball, met with softball. What do we need to do? Adjusted that accordingly and built it out over 2 successive funding packages. Very much the same process that we see here. Here's the concepts. Let's nail down what we want and let's get it built with the funding that we have. Here's a good question. Should we worry about Tulsa County coming back and asking for an extension on Vision 2025? Tulsa County might. We have left 0.05 cents available for Tulsa County. And as part of the Cities United group, and that was really the key to this, is part of the city said if we all do this together and have the county, we're not going to have as much competition. The county has not decided if they're going to come back and ask for more. They might. They might ask for a tenth or half a tenth. They're still trying to figure out what they're going to do. All the communities agreed to leave the 0.05 cents available to the county, which more or less produced the revenue that they had in the first vision. And that was the philosophy. The city said, we'll all leave this aside for the county so they get roughly the same revenue they had the first go around. So it is possible. When? I don't know if that's April. I don't know if that's some other time. But there is a possibility that Tulsa County would be coming and asking for a county-wide tax. And we're not sure what that amount would be or when. Right, yeah. We're not taking the full 0.6. That's what the 0.05, that's why we're 0.55. When you add 0.3 and 0.25, we're not 0.6 because we left that last 0.05 for the county. Okay. Here's another question. That restaurants were a huge part of revitalizing downtown Tulsa. Are there any properties in downtown Bixby that are far enough from a church or school to allow a liquor license for the restaurant? One of the things that we've done, and we have with some of the surplus money, is look at a master plan for the downtown area. Part of that master plan is taking a look at this. What can you do? What can't you do for restaurants? Alcohol sales, what might that mean? What might that look like? We don't have the full results of that yet to say where are the areas that restaurants would want to go for that very reason, where they might not want to go. So we are taking a look at that. That will be brought to bear when we go through these public meetings and everybody's taking a look at it on what we might want to do and where we might want to do it and what options that we have. A lot of what we're doing is looking at the park and what that might bring in people. But again, you've got to serve what people want to have to go to those restaurants. They're going to want to have the same quality, the same type that they have in downtown Tulsa or downtown Broken Arrow. They're going to want to have that same kind of service. So that is one of the things that we're evaluating. I just can't tell you exactly what that is right now until we get the results of those corridors and studies that would show us where those would be. Okay, I'll answer the first question. Why is the proposed percentage not proportional to the park or growth or development? Currently, we have a 1/4 cent proposal, but this is to bring the services up to date and not what is estimated. How is a 1/4 cent going to protect an estimated growth when you don't have adequate services in place now? Okay, let me break this down in two parts. What we have right now is the existing 1/4 penny covers 70% of what our needs are in the park. When we add to that 0.25, when we add 0.15, this will repurpose 0.15, so that takes us up to 0.4. So 0.4 cents gives us over and above what we need today. So that's why council said, let's not just bring it up to date, but let's look down the road. This is a forward-looking program. Let's look at what we need for downtown. Let's look at more of what we might need to do for Washington Irving Park. We don't promote it. I mean, the Rotary Club uses it well, and we have people asking to do events there all the time, and we don't advertise it. People just show up wanting to use the park. If we add these amenities, we know we're going to get more use. We get more people here. So let's look ahead, and that's why the 0.15 out of the 0.25 of repurposing to get us up to that level and additional tax. So hopefully that answers that question. But they did look at that and wanted to go not just up to date, but beyond. Right. And the theory is if you do an economic development package, that sales tax will continue to grow. You have more people, you have more use, that sales tax grows, that provides more revenue to help you keep up with that growth. And on a previous rendition of this presentation, we looked at public safety expense versus sales tax generated. And those lines tracked right together. That those expenses did increase, but for the most part, they were covered by increases in sales tax. And that's really what we've got to do. We've got to keep ahead of that growth of the cost of services with our sales tax. And that's why the economic development part is so important, because if you're not catching up, you'll go into the red very quickly. Okay, and this particular question is, why are we considering economic development downtown when Bixby has a flood and drainage control problem within established neighborhoods that continue to be a concern to homeowners? Primarily, why we've got these issues is because it's sales tax, and sales tax is economic development. Most all of the major drainage initiatives that are in neighborhoods are the result of bond issues. Those improvements go to those property owners that benefit from that. And so that's typically what it's been for those things that improve the land for residential homeowners. Those have been bond issues. That's part of that property tax. So part of it's philosophical. I mean, these monies in Vision were set aside for economic development for big projects. Hakey Creek, 900 acres out of the floodplain, is going to mean a significant growth opportunity. I mean, that could support 6,000 to 7,000 to 8,000 more residents. That kind of land in that area could yield that. So that's really what it is. Is sales tax dedicated to economic development? Those two things go hand in hand. A lot of the drainage projects that you've seen, the ones that some of them have been federally funded, FEMA. The Hakey Creek was sales tax funded, but that was seen as an economic development. We've had several FEMA projects, but a lot of those were generated out of bonds. So hopefully that answers that from philosophy. Do we have any more questions? Okay, sure. One of the things that we haven't talked about is what happens when you do reduce that load on the general fund. What happens when you create additional capacity? We know that moving forward, we're probably going to have some needs out at Lake Bixoma. We have a citizens group that's been very active about pushing that. What happens when you pass a proposal like this and you take some of those deficits out of the equation? You have additional monies to go back and reinvest in your other facilities, because that's really what it takes. And I was trying to show in some of those graphs about personnel, a number of personnel per thousand. There's not lots of other revenue laying around. And there's not lots of revenue laying around. You've got to find ways to shift that back and forth. And so those monies could be taken for grant monies. Lake Bixoma, there are boating grants available. We've looked into it, and those do total into the millions of dollars. But to get that $1 million grant, you have to have $300,000 worth of seed money to put in. So it creates capacity to go do things like that, to even go get some additional street funding. You could take $300,000 and get $1 million worth of state and federal dollars, just like we're doing at 111th and 121st, with that same $300,000, without going to a bond issue, without going through all that other tax proposals and election, because we create that capacity. What's Tulsa do? Tulsa has a penny dedicated to their streets. But you can see they're not exporting dollars, they're bringing it in so they can afford to take a couple of those pennies they don't need for operations and put it right into redoing their streets. And that's how a lot of those programs worked. When I was still in the private sector and had an engineering company, we did some work in Ponca City. They did the same thing. They had $1 penny dedicated just to streets and drainage. And they went and rebuilt every arterial street that they could. But they were a regional shopping center. People came there, and that created that capacity. So,
if anyone has any other questions or anything that they've thought of, and you want to go ahead and send us one, we do keep these. They're part of the file of the public record here for what we're doing. We do go through them again and maintain those. So when you give us the feedback, it helps us with the process of making sure that we are answering all the questions and giving the right information out to citizens as far as what you're interested in knowing, what you want to make sure that you're aware of. So if you have another question, now is the time. We'll be happy to take it.
Can I just verbally ask one, or do I need to write it down?
If you don't write it down, we don't have a record.
Can I ask it and write it down later? On the Vision 2025, does Bixby stand alone with the other cities that are in Tulsa County that were affected by 2025? Does Bixby stand alone in trying to recapture that tax, or are other cities doing the same thing we're here doing?
They're all doing the same thing, just in different sequencing. In January, it was we're all doing it in November. And then as Tulsa went through their process, and that went several different directions, Sand Springs held the course, Broken Arrow held the course, we held the course. But I can tell you the meetings that we're at, Owasso is planning one for the spring. Owasso, Jinx, Tulsa, they're kind of looking back and forth at the table trying to decide who's going to do what. But that was really the concept of Cities United, is everybody does it together, everybody does it in unity, so that we don't have an unevenness in that tax structure.
Sand Springs did theirs. Yeah, Sand Springs did theirs a couple weeks ago, and it passed by 81%. And Broken Arrow's doing theirs at the same time we are. If anybody has any other questions, we've got Harold. He loves to answer questions, and Brian. He loves to answer questions, and we all know Jared does. And if you can find me, I'll answer one. Appreciate you guys coming out and showing interest in where you live.